I honestly wasn't expecting much of Daima at first, with near enough all of the Super era being missed potential at the best of times, and a premise that seemed more of what GT had already done. That assessment wasn't entirely wrong or right, as we'll go into as I assess Daima as a whole. To start off with something it does well, the focus on world building and lore that tend to go to the background or inferred through cultural knowledge was a necessary change of pace, with the series at many points acting as a huge lore drop for things such as the Namekian's origins, the Makai's role in the multiverse, or things like Raimus being set up for future story arcs. This shift in narrative focus was handled well though, through Toriyama's ability to have things naturally fit together, as both elements of the Buu arc and the wider ideas of the franchise mix well here in many ways. For instance, the clearer distinction between how ki and magic are used help clarify debates some have on the Buu arc, such as if Dabra can or can't sense ki, and make Buu even more antithetical to one such as Goku as a pure embodiment of magic versus the pure embodiment of internal ki cultivation. Piccolo Daimao's title also gets another layer added to it, with the Namek's origins making it yet another instinct of Ketatsu's nature, and the time given to explore the technology of the Makai allows us to understand how general society, travel and whatnot functions there. In particular, the use of magic in Daima help clarify aspects of both the original manga and material beyond it. Something I haven't seen anyone talk about is Neva's ability to reactivate the Dragon Balls, directly answering what many cite as a plot hole of the original manga, of the Dragon Balls becoming capable of being used 8 months after their last use, rather than the standard year. From Kami's ability to reactivate them when reviving Shenlong's avatar a day after they were last used, it seemed obvious to me that plot hole was plugged back in the Piccolo Daimao arc, with it being apparent the time limit can be reduced with the right use of magic, or that required for the wish giving it some wiggle room in the recharge. Neva's feat extrapolates on this, with even more solid proof the time limit can be reduced, that adds to what's established in the original manga, rather than take away from it. On that subject of Neva, it's worth going over the premise of turning the cast into children that many seem to point to as inconsistent with how the Dragon Balls can't directly weaken someone. On its own this would be an issue, but Neva's later magic feats, going beyond what we've seen of any magic user in relation to their amount of ki, ended up justifying it. What I will offer criticism on with the clear nerf though, is that things such as Goku being able to defeat an opponent even Dabra couldn't, regardless of it being before Babidi made him stronger, shows mini Goku as being more or less in the same range as his Buu arc self, and adult Goku simply being far stronger after a few months of special training. If comparing the premise with GT, where the goal was to nerf Goku after he become too strong, Daima succeeds in nerfing his power more, with GT doing a worse job in elaborating on how it affected Goku's fighting style, and outright refuting any notions of it affecting his ki's amount. Daima instead has the issue of having made adult Goku far stronger than before, when he could have easily been made negligibly stronger than his Buu arc self, and be nerfed enough Dabra could seem like a huge benchmark. Yet mini Goku's feats would make one unaware of his level of ki being nerfed until after everyone's bodies were restored. GT also succeeded in the wish having greater impact on plot progression, through nerfing his techniques more, with Shunkan Ido being too complex, and his child body not being able to use Super Saiyan 3 for long, unlike in Daima. And that won't be the only time I compare GT and Daima on a plot point, obviously. Also, the Ultimate Dragon Balls made things far more of a ticking time bomb. A big driving force for the story is the new characters introduced, which are a fairly mixed bag. Gloria was an interesting premise, as spy archetypes weren't ones Toriyama had presented in Dragon Ball for its heroes, but the limited limited runtime of the series makes what was a good premise a bit rushed in terms of his character growth. Pansy is essentially the middle ground of Buruma's character arc, as self-absorbed and bratty in ways as her 16-year-old self, but as altruistic and courageous as her adult self. A good reflection, but one of the least interesting characters from a plot perspective, when the main thing separating her and Buruma is just magic. Then there's Hibis though, who, beyond all expectations, ends up being one of the best, most colourful characters Toriyama has created in a long time, with his quirky tastes, absolute lack of filter, and just being what I can only call a Sigma. The comedy surrounding him also brings up the tone of Daima, which is mainly comedic rather than getting as serious as, say, Against Cell or Goku Black. That's not to say it's without serious topics, such as the slavery Goma inflicts on the third Makai, the conversation between Nahare and Degasu, highlighting the complexities of what the Glinds consider their duty, or the necessity of borders and security, until those responsible can use freedom well, that make Daima more comparable to the Red Ribbon Army arc, that had darker ideas covered in a lighter exterior. Still, there is some right to criticize it when the sense of loss or danger wasn't as great as with the Red Ribbon, nor as Against Boo, which Daima is a direct sequel to. If looking at Daima purely in terms of character interactions though, this does have some of the best gags in the series, such as everything Hibis does, and especially those surrounding Vegeta and Buruma, like Hibis confirming Vegeta was drawn to more than her personality.
A tasteful thickness of it.
And Buruma's threat. Moving on to the villainous group, Goma is an interesting case of flipping the script, as one could expect him to have a similar fate to Red, Gero, or Babidi, in being overthrown by the more competent Arinsu. But in Toriyama fashion, that trope is countered by circumstances having him rise above all, and it's quite engaging when being someone who was physically irrelevant, but had fairly strong magic, rising to the rank of main villain, when though since Piccolo Daimao had, even if not been the strongest during their introduction, been built different from those around them in some manner. The problem with Goma though, is that Gloria hypes up even his base self as having some strong magic, but we never get the impression of this, when he used the third eye mainly just for brute strength, and his ability to negate transformations is way more limited than what Morok could do against those with ki far beyond his. As for Arinsu, she takes the elements that made Towa a good concept, and allows Toriyama to do more with her directly, as an ambitious scientist who desires conquest through her intellect, and has a more fleshed out goal than similar characters, in wishing to protect the Makai from both itself and the outside multiverse, or that at least being what she tells herself to justify her desire for power. Her brother Degasu, however, is quite the waste. Chronologically, he does work as a precursor for Zamasu, especially in how they contrast with Nahare and Gowasu respectively, but not much is explored in reflecting them, and he gets taken out of the plot in a very underwhelming manner. As for Majin Ku and Do, there's quite a bit to say about them. The reveal of Boo's origins, while a retcon in the proper definition of the term, does work well when you consider the story we were initially told presents a problem. If Bibidi created Boo, and Babidi's magic is greater, why didn't he spend those 5 million years creating a new Boo, rather than hoping there's enough energy to collect in Universe 7? Maba fixes this in revealing Bibidi was a fraud, which lines up well with the retcon Toriyama presented in an interview. Having Ku be created with Saibai Man seeds not only adds to the list of how the Saibai Man have slowly had a lot more shine in post-manga material, but shows what can happen when given full sentience, with Ku embodying the humanization of Boo adding more to his chaotic being, and this combination being what secured the win against Goma, whereas Do fully embracing Boo's chaotic instincts shows the immense potential that can come when these sides of Boo work together. This being a GT similarity, Daima did far better, with how much Super Oob got way wasted after the baby arc. This includes what can be seen as a random thing, like Do copying Super Saiyan 3, in showing the raw talent Boo holds that is only limited by his ego. On this topic of mimicry, the way in which characters such as Tamagami number 3 are influenced by Goku, have these supporting characters validate Goku's role in Daima's story. Having Daima act as a good story for his character arc as both a person and martial artist was always going to be awkward when his arc from the original manga was near enough complete after Boo, and going into new territory wouldn't be possible until Super. Daima makes the right decision in playing into the idea permeating throughout Dragon Ball of his pure-hearted dedication to the ideals of Shugyo, or austere training, that align with what can be seen as the Tao, have him end up influencing those around him in, aside from Zamasu, overall positive ways. And this is displayed with how the initially unfamiliar to Ki Glorio was eventually able to internally cultivate it, which also lines up in the clarified morality he gains by the climax. Turning attention to returning characters, Daima handles Vegeta well too, in him having caught up to Goku when training himself with pure intentions than before, as I've gone into in the video concerning his Super Saiyan 3 reveal, which I won't reiterate here for brevity, and his character interactions show how much he's adjusted to earthling life. I mean, the Saiyan's pride may be stronger than one's body and mind, but there's one thing that can overpower it: a romantic bath. Piccolo, unfortunately, isn't given enough time to do much directly beyond embarrassing Degasu, but the reveals concerning the origin of the Namex do add more layers to things such as Piccolo Daimao's title, the importance of Piccolo grown beyond it, and hammer in how things such as Orange Piccolo line up with the true purpose of the Dragon Balls as a test of character in the role the Tamagami play in embodying this concept. The returning character to benefit the most from Daima though is Shin, or Nahare, as he's given far more to do personally here than in the Boo arc. While his role there worked at times, such as saving Gohan, his main contribution to the plot beyond that was being the connecting thread to other characters with more mechanical plot relevance, such as Kibito's Kaikai and healing, or Rodai Kaioshin's ritual. Here, Nahare gets far more time to personally contribute, such as using magic to break Kachinko collars, helping connect those of the Makai and Universe 7 on the concepts of both, or his interactions with Goku, having him very much take the role of Sanzan to Dragon Ball's Sun Wukong. On that, an aspect of Daima's narrative that stands out is how it has some of the most blatant ties to Shioji, or Journey to the West. While Shioji permeates throughout the entirety of Dragon Ball, most of it was subtle ties after the first arc. Daima fully embraces the story's cultural origins though, with things such as the end goal for the adventure, battles against demons, the focus on worthiness of the Dragon Balls, being very much how Sanzan's group have to prove themselves worthy of the sutras, and Ku's appointing of the roles at the end, being very much as how the main characters of Shioji are given Buddhist titles after their journey. Another returning character given more to them is Dabura, with him overthrowing his father and getting rid of the third eye, showing his honour towards true strength, that the manga only gave glimpses of, juxtaposed with the evil act of patricide. As for other supporting characters in the series, they don't get given the time to be fleshed out well. Kadan, having ambitions for the whole Makai, could create a lot of intrigue if more of a grand spanning story, rather than a 20-episode anime. The Tamagami serve their purpose, as embodying the Dragon Balls being the test for the worthy, but that's about it. The Kenpei Tokusentai don't really add much to the gags the Ginyu Tokusentai already did, or even what the Pride Troopers and Gammas did more recently. And although they could have never competed with the Dragon Team in terms of power, the kind of broken abilities magic can provide could have at least allowed them some wacky abilities to be more than jobbers. Maba, being Boo's creator, provides a lot of things to explore, but her saying it was a fluke pushes her out of the way once her role is fulfilled, and the flashback to Abra that seemed like it would be a significant part of Daima's narrative has him simply revealed to be someone who relied on the third eye and was then quickly overthrown when that was taken out of the picture. It's with this that we move on to Daima's biggest flaw as a story, which is its 20 episode count, and how it makes pacing inconsistent, as well as many concepts or characters underdeveloped. For instance, the time taken to explore how the Makai functions as a society in its early episodes, or time being taken to show otherwise inconsequential parts of the setting, like Planet Mega, being juxtaposed with how the plot rushes to the climax once reaching the first Makai. Speaking of Mega, which can obviously be compared to GT's Monmass, this is something GT did better, through a Dragon Ball being there justifying its placement, whereas Mega's presence in Daima currently makes it padding. The climax makes this most apparent, with way too much time being dedicated to pure action, as opposed to clarifying some plot points, such as why Goku didn't or couldn't use Super Saiyan 4 at any point in Super, the fusion bug being a Chekhov's gun that never went off, and could have easily been implemented in a future arc if meant to be set up for that alone. Frankly, I knew it wouldn't be a Goku-Vegeta fusion when DBS Broly established they'd only used Potara until then, but something like a Piccolo-Shin fusion could have worked, or maybe be an alternate way for Kibito-Shin to happen again, with it never being dressed how or why they fused again by the time of Battle of Gods. This brings up another issue with Daima, as some plot points focus too much on setting up future stories, rather than condensing things down to what's necessary for Daima's narrative. While I find the criticism of an arc focusing on setup for later events in what's a long-running series to often be invalid, there's truth to it when it detracts from an entry's own narrative, and that can be seen with how things such as Raimus, Super Saiyan 4, Gohan not even being shown or invited to come along, or how the currently confusing origins of the Dragon Balls between Zalama and Neva's sets raise too many questions and not enough answers. With that mention of Super Saiyan 4, this was easily the biggest twist in Daima, in both popularity and divisiveness. This is especially after the reveal of Goku being aware of it after intense training, or Tokun, but it being implied to only be usable thanks to Neva, which would make sense, but adds a lot of questions for Super, some of which may also be due to the divide between Toriyama's own intent and how both the Super manga and anime interpret his notes in different ways. The most likely scenario is Goku could only briefly reactivate it thanks to Neva's magic still being present, and the boost of regaining his adult body, considering he doesn't have the tail necessary to activate it at will if going by GT's rules, much like how he could only briefly use Ultra Instinct against Jiren, but the lack of clarification on this causes unnecessary confusion. Just focusing on its use within Daima though, Neva judging Goku as worthy makes it an okay payoff, but an unnecessary one for the plot, as with how vague the power scaling surrounding Goma and adult Goku is, it could have simply been rewritten to have the wish occur earlier, Super Saiyan 3 Goku performing the same feats, and nothing would seem out of place. The most simple meta reason for this would be GT nostalgia, but beyond proof of worthiness, the Daima version adds nothing to Goku's character, unlike Ultra Vegeta 1 did for his, and honestly detracts from Orange Piccolo being a similar thing, but more of a payoff for Piccolo's whole character arc. Comparing both versions of Super Saiyan 4 directly, the GT version is far more of a testament to Goku's growth, in being given the opportunity to truly confront and control his Ozaru nature, as well as it displaying a complete ideological opposition to Baby's views on the Saiyans being primitive and evil, while being an ironic twist when only brought about through Baby's wish. Daima has that last part a bit through Goma's wish, but the tie isn't as strong. That said, Daima as a whole is a mixed bag, with it having some excellent thematic concepts when it comes to tying into the series' core philosophy, many new colourful characters, and much to add to returning ones, yet also has many underdeveloped ideas, and what concepts it takes from GT were done far better there about 70 or 80% of the time, though I wouldn't be confident in declaring GT as superior as a whole, when Daima at least didn't have the Super 17 arc bogging down the mean score. Its role as a springboard for new stories makes it difficult to judge how well it will age, but its current list of pros and cons makes it about average overall for now. Still, it's far from an unnecessary work, with it smoothing over some rougher parts of the Boo arc, and having us see some narrative concepts of the original manga and Super in a new light, along with tonally resenting Toriyama at his most natural, though much could be done to improve it. I'm thankful for Toriyama creating this swan-song work, and can only hope Toyotaro and Ioku at least try to smooth over its narrative flaws in future projects. Thank you for having watched through this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more analyses on Dragon Ball and other series. In particular, with it making Super Saiyan 4 a hot topic again, maybe you'd like this older one on how well GT handled it.